Rain hammered against the kitchen window at 1 in the morning while I wrestled with a leaky faucet that had been dripping for 3 weeks. The steady ping 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 had finally driven me to action, though I suspected my wife Genevieve would find something wrong with my repair job tomorrow. She always did. "Just tell him you're going to visit Mom," I heard her whisper in the hallway. "I'll say I'm at study group. He's too busy fixing the house to notice anyway." My stepdaughter Megan's voice carried that familiar tone of conspiracy. "Are you sure about this weekend plan? What if he checks?" "Richard never checks anything. He just assumes we're telling the truth." I froze with the wrench halfway turned, water still dripping onto my knuckles. Apparently, my plumbing skills were so mesmerizing that my wife needed to find excitement elsewhere. The irony wasn't lost on me. I spent my days managing logistics for a mid-sized shipping company, tracking every package and delivery route with obsessive precision, yet I couldn't track my own family's movements. Footsteps retreated toward the master bedroom, leaving me alone with the persistent drip and a growing suspicion that had been gnawing at me for months. Genevieve worked in public relations downtown, all polished surfaces and carefully crafted images. She moved in circles where I never quite fit: charity galas, wine tastings, networking events, where my blue-collar background showed like a stain on expensive fabric. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. Genevieve emerged from the bedroom looking effortlessly elegant in her silk robe, dark hair pulled back in that casual way that probably took 20 minutes to achieve. "Richard, I need to drive up to see Mother this weekend," she announced, while pouring coffee into her favorite ceramic mug. "She's been feeling poorly again, and you know how she gets when she's alone." Megan appeared in the doorway wearing an oversized university sweatshirt, looking appropriately concerned. "I was thinking of staying on campus for a study group anyway. Big exam coming up." I nodded and continued buttering my toast. "How long will you be gone?" "Just the weekend, maybe Monday if she's really struggling." Genevieve's voice carried that practiced sympathy she used for difficult clients. "You'll be fine here, won't you? Maybe you can finally fix that loose board on the deck." "Sure thing." I kept my expression neutral, though something cold was settling in my chest. "Tell your mother I hope she feels better." The house felt different after they left Friday afternoon. Quieter, but not peaceful, more like the silence before a storm. I spent the evening researching surveillance equipment online, then decided on a simpler approach. Social media had made everyone an amateur detective. Saturday morning brought the first revelation. Genevieve's Facebook showed a check-in at a lakeside restaurant 200 miles north of where her mother lived. The location tag read Sunset Harbor Marina, and the timestamp was barely an hour old. I screenshot the post, then dug deeper. Megan's Instagram story showed a champagne glass against what looked like polished wood paneling. The caption read, "Living my best life," with a yacht emoji. My coffee grew cold as I scrolled through more posts. There was Genevieve in designer sunglasses, laughing at something off camera. Megan posing on what was clearly the deck of an expensive boat. The final piece came from a tagged photo on someone else's account, both women flanking a man I recognized from old pictures in Genevieve's jewelry box. Bradley Holt, Megan's biological father, and Genevieve's ex-husband. The man owned 3 luxury car dealerships and apparently had enough money to buy the kind of yacht that appeared in lifestyle magazines. He was everything I wasn't: inherited wealth, country club connections, the kind of easy confidence that came from never worrying about mortgage payments. I saved every image, then opened my laptop and logged into the university's payment portal. Megan's tuition bill stared back at me, $15,000 due in 2 weeks. I'd been faithfully transferring money each semester, proud that I could help give her opportunities I'd never had. Not anymore. I deleted my automatic payment authorization and closed the laptop. Rich boyfriends came with perks, and it was time for Bradley to start earning his keep. Sunday passed in strange calm. I fixed the deck board, cleaned the garage, and ordered pizza while browsing more social media posts. They were having quite the celebration on Bradley's yacht, complete with sunset dinners and morning mimosas. My phone buzzed with a text from Genevieve. "Mother is doing better. Might stay until Tuesday to make sure she's stable." I typed back, "Take all the time you need." Monday brought the first consequences. The university's automated billing system sent Megan an overdue notice, which apparently triggered a panic attack. My phone rang at 10 in the morning. "Richard, what happened to my tuition payment?" Megan's voice was tight with stress. "The bursar's office says there's been no activity on my account." "That's strange," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Maybe there was a processing delay." "Can you check? I'm freaking out here. If this doesn't get resolved, they might drop me from classes." "I'll look into it and get back to you." I hung up and deleted her voicemail without listening to it. Tuesday afternoon brought Genevieve home, looking relaxed and tanned, despite supposedly spending 3 days caring for an invalid. She kissed my cheek with the kind of perfunctory affection reserved for distant relatives. "How's your mother?" I asked. "Much better. Sometimes she just needs someone to fuss over her." Genevieve set down her overnight bag, the expensive leather one I'd bought for our anniversary. "Did anything interesting happen while I was gone?" "Not really. Fixed some things around the house. Quiet weekend." That evening, Megan called again, this time with Genevieve listening on speakerphone. Her voice carried that entitled edge that had always grated on my nerves. "Richard, seriously, what's going on with my tuition? The payment is a week overdue now, and they're threatening to freeze my account." I leaned back in my recliner, remote control balanced on my knee. "I stopped the payments." Silence stretched across the connection like a taut wire. "What do you mean you stopped them?" Genevieve's voice had shifted into her professional crisis management mode. "I mean, I'm no longer paying Megan's college expenses." "But why?" Megan's voice climbed toward hysteria. "You can't just stop without warning. What am I supposed to do?" I reached for my phone and opened the photo gallery I'd been curating all weekend. With a few taps, I sent the yacht pictures to both their numbers. "Ask your rich boyfriend to handle it," I said calmly. "He seems to have plenty of money for weekend getaways." The speakerphone went quiet, except for the sound of notifications pinging on their devices. "Richard, I can explain," Genevieve started. "No need. The pictures explain everything." I stood up and headed toward the kitchen. "Megan, your biological father owns 3 car dealerships. I'm sure he can afford tuition." "You can't be serious," Megan said. "We were just having a family reunion on a yacht while lying to me about sick relatives." "Yeah, I figured that out." I ended the call and poured myself a glass of wine, the good bottle Genevieve had been saving for a special occasion. Apparently, this qualified. My phone buzzed with incoming texts, but I ignored them. 20 years of marriage, 15 years of paying for another man's daughter, and this was how they repaid my loyalty. They wanted to play games with the truth? Fine. But they'd learned that I was better at this game than they imagined. The house felt different now, not empty but cleaner somehow, like I'd finally thrown out something that had been rotting in the refrigerator for too long. I had work to do, plans to make, and a reputation to rebuild. They thought I was just the quiet guy who fixed leaky faucets and paid bills without complaint. They were about to discover how wrong they'd been about that. Wednesday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that usually lifted my spirits, but today it felt like the calm before a hurricane. I dressed for work in my standard uniform, khakis, button-down shirt, and the kind of practical shoes that could handle warehouse floors. The shipping company, where I managed logistics, wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough to support a lifestyle I was apparently no longer funding. Genevieve had left early for her downtown office, claiming an emergency client meeting. She'd barely spoken to me since the yacht photos surfaced, communicating in the kind of clipped, professional tones she reserved for difficult vendors. My phone buzzed with another text from Megan. "We need to talk. This is ridiculous." I deleted it without responding. At work, I buried myself in route optimization spreadsheets and delivery schedules, finding comfort in the logical progression of packages from point A to point B. Unlike family relationships, shipping logistics followed predictable patterns. You could track everything, anticipate problems, and adjust accordingly. "Richard, you look like someone stole your lunch money," said Tom Morrison, sliding into the chair across from my desk. Tom managed our West Coast routes and had the kind of easy humor that made 12-hour days bearable. "Just family drama," I said, not looking up from my computer screen. "The wife giving you grief again?" I paused, considering how much to reveal. Tom had been divorced twice and understood marital warfare better than most. Let's just say I discovered some interesting vacation photos. "Ah," Tom nodded knowingly. "The kind of photos that don't match the story you were told?" "Exactly those kind." "What's your next move?" I minimized the spreadsheet and leaned back in my chair. "I'm thinking strategic withdrawal of financial support." "Smart. Money talks louder than arguments." Tom glanced around to make sure we weren't being overheard. "You need backup documentation, though. Screenshots, bank records, anything that proves what they've been up to." "Already handled." "Good man. You want some advice from someone who's been through this twice?" I nodded. "Don't get emotional. Stay cold, stay logical, and make every move count. The moment you start yelling or throwing things, you lose credibility." That afternoon, I drove to the university campus where Megan was supposedly studying. The place reeked of old money and privilege. Ivy-covered buildings, perfectly manicured lawns, and students who'd never worried about student loan payments. I found Megan in the coffee shop near the library, hunched over her laptop with the kind of intense concentration that suggested actual studying. She looked up when I approached her table, and I saw genuine fear in her eyes for the first time. "Richard, thank goodness you're here. We really need to figure this out." I sat down across from her, noting the designer handbag and expensive boots that suggested her financial priorities were somewhat misaligned. "What exactly do we need to figure out?" "The tuition thing. I know you're upset about the weekend, but you can't just cut me off without warning." "Actually, I can. I'm not your father, remember? I've been paying for your education out of generosity, not obligation." Megan's face flushed red. "That's not fair. You've been part of my life since I was 8 years old. And you've been lying to me since you were old enough to form complete sentences." I kept my voice level, almost conversational. "Tell me, how long has this yacht weekend thing been going on?" "It was just one weekend. Mom wanted to see if she could work things out with Dad for my sake." "Your sake?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Megan, your mother was posting champagne photos while supposedly caring for a sick relative. That's not family reconciliation. That's vacation planning." She looked down at her laptop screen, fingers fidgeting with her coffee cup. "You don't understand how complicated this is. Then explain it to me. Make me understand why I should continue funding the education of someone who thinks I'm too stupid to check social media." "It's not like that." "It's exactly like that." I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots I'd collected. "Your mother checked in at a marina 200 miles from her mother's house. You posted yacht photos with champagne emojis. Your father tagged you both in pictures that clearly show a weekend party, not a medical emergency." Megan stared at the evidence, her face cycling through emotions like a slot machine. "Okay, maybe we should have been more honest about the weekend plans." "Maybe?" I put the phone away. "Megan, you actively participated in a lie designed to make me look like a fool. That's not a communication problem. That's a character problem. So you're just going to abandon me? After 15 years? I'm not abandoning you. I'm redirecting you to your actual father. who apparently has enough money to own a yacht but not enough responsibility to pay for his daughter's education. I stood up, leaving her sitting there with her expensive laptop and designer accessories. Call Bradley. I'm sure he'll be happy to help. The drive home took me past the downtown district where Genevieve worked. Her PR agency occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower that reflected the late afternoon sun like a beacon of success. I'd always felt intimidated by that building, by the world it represented, and my obvious exclusion from it. Not anymore. I parked across the street and called the agency's main number. Morrison Blake Public Relations. How may I direct your call? I'd like to speak with someone about Genevieve Farrow's client conduct policies. I'm sorry, could you be more specific? I have information about Mrs. Farrow's recent activities that might affect her professional standing. Who would handle that kind of concern? There was a pause, then, let me transfer you to Human Resources. 20 minutes later, I'd provided a detailed account of the yacht weekend, complete with social media evidence and documentation of the lies told to family members. I presented it as a concerned spouse worried about his wife's judgment and professional integrity. We appreciate you bringing this to our attention, Mr. Farrow. We'll look into the matter appropriately. I just want what's best for everyone involved. That evening, Genevieve came home looking rattled. She'd traded her usual composed expression for something closer to panic, and her hands shook slightly as she set down her purse. Richard, did you call my office today? Why would I do that? Someone contacted HR with questions about my conduct. They wouldn't say who, but they mentioned social media posts and family emergencies. I continued reading my newspaper, not bothering to look up. That's strange. Maybe someone saw your vacation photos and got confused about the timeline. It wasn't a vacation. It was a complicated family situation. Right, the kind of complicated family situation that requires champagne and yacht selfies. Genevieve sat down across from me, her professional mask slipping to reveal something desperate underneath. You don't understand what you're doing. My career depends on maintaining client trust and professional credibility. Then maybe you should have thought about that before posting evidence of your lies on social media. Those posts were private. Nothing on social media is private, Genevieve. You work in public relations. You should know that better than anyone. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. When did you become so calculating? I learned from the best. I folded the newspaper and stood up. I'm going to the gym, don't wait up. The boxing gym, where I'd been working out for the past year, occupied a converted warehouse on the wrong side of downtown. It smelled like sweat and determination, populated by men who understood that sometimes you had to fight for what you wanted. Danny, the Fixer Rodriguez, had been coaching fighters for 30 years before retiring to run this place. He was also the closest thing I had to a real friend, someone who'd seen enough of life's ugliness to appreciate straight talk. You look like someone who needs to hit something, Danny said as I walked through the door. That obvious? Your wife still giving you trouble? I wrapped my hands and started working the heavy bag, letting each punch carry some of the anger that had been building for months. She took a weekend vacation with her ex-husband and told me she was caring for her sick mother. Ouch. Danny held the bag steady while I worked. What's your plan? I stopped paying for her daughter's college tuition. That's a start. What else? I may have mentioned her conduct issues to her employer. Danny grinned. Now you're thinking like someone who wants to win instead of someone who wants to be right. I threw a combination that sent shock waves through my shoulders. Any other suggestions? Document everything. Keep records of every lie, every expense, every time they try to manipulate you. When this goes nuclear, and it will, you want to be the one holding the evidence. How do you know it'll go nuclear? Because people like your wife don't handle consequences well. She's probably never faced real pushback in her life. When her comfortable world starts falling apart, she'll escalate. I threw another combination. imagining Bradley's smug face on the receiving end. What kind of escalation? Could be anything. False accusations, attempts to turn friends against you, maybe trying to take half your assets in a divorce? Danny shrugged. The important thing is staying one step ahead. That night, I lay in bed listening to Genevieve make hushed phone calls in the bathroom. Her voice carried that edge of panic I'd heard earlier, and I caught fragments about damage control and reputation management. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Bradley. We need to talk." I smiled in the darkness and deleted the message. Let him sweat for a while. I was just getting started. Thursday brought the first signs that my strategy was working. Genevieve left for work an hour earlier than usual, her face tight with the kind of stress that expensive skincare couldn't hide. She'd spent most of the night on phone calls, her voice carrying that forced calm she used when managing PR disasters for her clients. At my office, I focused on quarterly shipping reports while monitoring my phone for updates. The first call came at 10:30. "Richard, this is Bradley Holt. I think we need to have a conversation." His voice carried that smooth confidence that came with inherited money and country club memberships. I'd heard it in Genevieve's stories about their marriage, the kind of casual arrogance that assumed everyone else would accommodate his preferences. "About what?" I kept my tone neutral, professional. "About this tuition situation with Megan. She's very upset, and frankly, I think you're being unreasonable." "Unreasonable how?" "You can't just cut off support without warning. That girl depends on you." I leaned back in my desk chair, enjoying the conversation more than I'd expected. "Bradley, let me make sure I understand this correctly. You're calling to lecture me about financial responsibility toward your daughter?" "Well, yes. You've been helping with her education for years. While you've been doing what exactly, besides buying yachts and hosting weekend parties?" Silence stretched across the connection. I could practically hear him recalculating his approach. "Look, Richard, I know this weekend might have seemed inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" I laughed, genuinely amused. "Bradley, you took my wife and stepdaughter on a yacht vacation while they told me they were dealing with a family medical emergency. That's not inappropriate. That's fraud." "It wasn't like that. Genevieve and I were discussing Megan's future and save the explanation for someone who cares. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to take over Megan's educational expenses, since you're apparently back in their lives now. I'm done subsidizing your family reunions." "You can't be serious." "Completely serious. In fact, I'm transferring the remaining funds from her education account back to my personal savings this afternoon." I hung up before he could respond, then immediately called the bank to make good on my threat. $18,000 moved from Megan's education fund back to my checking account, money I'd been saving for 2 years to help her finish school. The second call came an hour later. Megan's voice was thick with tears and barely controlled rage. "How could you do this to me? I'm going to lose my spot in the program." "No, you're not. Your father is going to handle your tuition from now on. He can't just write a check for $15,000. His money is tied up in business investments." "Then maybe he should have thought about that before planning yacht weekends." I kept my voice calm, almost bored. "Megan, this is a simple equation. You chose to lie to me and participate in your mother's deception. Actions have consequences." "This is insane. You're destroying my future over one weekend." "I'm not destroying anything. I'm just no longer paying for it." I paused, letting that sink in. "Tell me, how many other family emergencies have there been? How many times have you covered for your mother while I played the fool?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "That's what I thought. Good luck with your studies, Megan. I'm sure your father will figure something out." That afternoon, I drove to Bradley's main dealership, a gleaming showroom full of luxury cars that cost more than most people's annual salaries. He'd built his business on his father's money and his own talent for separating wealthy customers from their cash. I walked in wearing my work clothes, khakis, and a polo shirt that screamed middle management, and asked to speak with Mr. Holt about purchasing a vehicle. The receptionist, a young woman with perfect teeth and practiced enthusiasm, led me to his office. Bradley rose from behind a desk that probably cost more than my monthly salary, extending his hand with that politician's smile. "Richard, I'm glad you decided to come in. We really should clear the air about this situation." "Actually, I'm here to buy a car." I sat down without shaking his hand. "I've been thinking about upgrading, and I heard you give special deals to family members." His smile faltered slightly. "Family members?" "Well, we're practically family now, aren't we? You're spending weekends with my wife, taking care of my stepdaughter. I figure that makes us some kind of relatives." Bradley's face cycled through several expressions before settling on cautious confusion. "Richard, I think there's been a misunderstanding about last weekend." "Has there?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the yacht photos. "Because these pictures suggest you were having quite the family reunion." He glanced at the images, then back at my face. "Look, Genevieve reached out to me because she was concerned about Megan's future. We thought it would be good for the three of us to spend some time together, work through some old issues. On a yacht, with champagne, while lying to me about the whole thing. The yacht was just convenient, and we weren't trying to deceive anyone." "Bradley," I leaned forward, letting some genuine anger creep into my voice. "Do you think I'm stupid? Of course not. Then stop talking to me like I am." I stood up, straightening my shirt. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to take over all of Megan's educational expenses, effective immediately. You're going to stop planning secret family reunions with my wife. And you're going to stay out of my marriage. You can't dictate." "I'm not dictating anything. I'm just removing myself from the equation." I headed toward the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Bradley? If I find out about any more yacht weekends, I'll make sure everyone in your social circle knows exactly what kind of man you really are." I left him sitting there, his perfect smile finally cracking around the edges. That evening brought the confrontation I'd been expecting. Genevieve stormed into the house at 7:30, her professional composure completely shattered. "What did you say to Bradley?" "We discussed his new financial responsibilities regarding his daughter." "You threatened him." "I informed him of changed circumstances." I continued reading my book, not bothering to look up. "How did your day at work go? Any interesting conversations with HR?" Her face went pale. "Richard, you need to stop this right now. You're damaging relationships that took years to build." "Whose relationships? Yours with your ex-husband? Your daughter's with her biological father? I'm not damaging anything. I'm just clarifying where I fit in the family structure." "That's not what this is about, and you know it." I finally looked up from my book. "Then explain to me what this is about, Genevieve. Make me understand why you felt the need to lie to me about spending a weekend with another man." "It wasn't about him. It was about Megan needing to connect with her father." "Then why lie? Why not just tell me the truth?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. We both knew the answer, because the truth would have required her to admit that she was still attracted to her ex-husband, still drawn to the lifestyle he represented. "You're being cruel," she said finally. "I'm being logical. You want to rebuild your relationship with Bradley? Fine. But you can do it without my financial support." My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it, then smiled. "What?" Genevieve demanded. "Megan just informed me that Bradley can't cover her tuition until next semester. Apparently his money is tied up in some business deal." I set the phone down. "Looks like your family reunion is going to cost more than you expected." Genevieve stared at me like I'd transformed into someone she'd never seen before. "When did you become so vindictive?" "I learned from watching you manage PR crises. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense." She turned and walked toward the bedroom, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor like a countdown timer. I returned to my book, but the words blurred together as I thought about what came next. Danny had been right. This was going nuclear. But I was ready for whatever they threw at me. For the first time in years, I felt like I was playing to win instead of just trying not to lose. Friday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was reviewing shipping manifests when my assistant knocked on my office door. "Richard, there's a woman here to see you. Says it's about a family matter." I looked up to see Annika Walsh standing in my doorway. Genevieve's best friend and confidant, a woman who'd never liked me and never bothered to hide it. She worked as a freelance marketing consultant, which seemed to involve a lot of expensive lunches and very little actual work. "Annika, this is a surprise. We need to talk." She sat down without being invited, crossing her legs with the kind of calculated elegance that suggested she'd practiced the move in front of a mirror. "About what?" "About the damage you're doing to people who care about you." I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. Annika had always been attractive in that high-maintenance way that required constant professional attention. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect clothes that cost more than my monthly car payment. Which people would those be? Genevieve is devastated. Megan is having panic attacks about her future. You're tearing apart a family over a simple misunderstanding. Simple misunderstanding? I laughed. Annika, they lied to me about a weekend vacation with another man. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a conspiracy. You're being dramatic. Genevieve was trying to help Megan rebuild her relationship with her father. She didn't tell you because she knew you'd react exactly like this. React like what? Like someone who doesn't appreciate being lied to? Annika leaned forward, her voice dropping to that intimate tone she probably used to manipulate clients. Richard, you're a good man, but you've never understood Genevieve's world. She needs connections, relationships, opportunities that you can't provide. The words hit exactly where she'd intended them to. For a moment, I felt that familiar shame about my background, my limitations, my obvious inadequacy in their social circles. Then I remembered the yacht photos and the lies, and the shame transformed into something colder. You're right, I said quietly. I can't provide yachts and country club memberships, but I can provide honesty and loyalty. Apparently those aren't valued in Genevieve's world. That's not fair. Fair? I stood up, moving around the desk to tower over her chair. Annika, let me tell you what's not fair. 15 years of supporting another man's daughter while he spent his money on toys. 20 years of marriage to a woman who's apparently embarrassed by my existence. Being treated like a fool by people who should respect me. No one thinks you're a fool. Everyone thinks I'm a fool. The question is whether I'm going to keep proving them right. Annika's perfect composure cracked slightly. What do you want? An apology? Genevieve is sorry about the way things happened. I want the truth. How long has this been going on? What do you mean? The secret meetings with Bradley, the family reunions I'm not invited to. How long, Annika? She looked away, confirming my suspicions. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. Genevieve has been struggling with your marriage for a while. She loves you, but she feels trapped by your limitations. Bradley represents the life she gave up when she married you. The honesty was brutal and probably unintentional. I sat back down, processing the implications. So this weekend wasn't about Megan reconnecting with her father. It was about Genevieve reconnecting with her ex-husband. It's complicated. It's really not. I picked up my phone and started scrolling through contacts. Thank you for clarifying the situation, Annika. You've been very helpful. What are you doing? Calling a lawyer. If Genevieve wants her old life back, she can have it. But she can't have it and keep mine, too. Annika's face went white. Richard, don't do anything hasty. This can all be worked out. I'm sure it can. Just not with me involved. She left my office looking shaken, which gave me more satisfaction than it probably should have. I didn't actually call a lawyer, not yet. but the threat had served its purpose. That afternoon, I drove to the university to clean out Megan's education account completely. The remaining funds, nearly $20,000, transferred back to my personal savings with a few clicks on my phone. While I was there, I stopped by the financial aid office. "I need to remove myself as a financial guarantor for Megan Holt," I told the clerk. "Are you her father?" "Stepfather, but I'm no longer able to provide support." The paperwork took 15 minutes. Megan would get a notification that her financial backing had been withdrawn, effective immediately. If she wanted to stay in school, she'd need to find alternative funding within 30 days. My phone rang as I walked back to my car. Genevieve's number flashed on the screen. "Richard, Annika told me about your conversation. We need to talk." "About what?" "About fixing this situation before it gets out of hand." "It's already out of hand, Genevieve. The question is what you're going to do about it." "I want to meet. Tonight. Somewhere we can talk privately." I considered the request. Part of me wanted to hear what she had to say, to understand how she justified the lies and deception. Another part of me suspected this was just another manipulation attempt. "Where?" "The lake house, 8 o'clock. The lake house belonged to Genevieve's family, a modest cabin on a remote lake about an hour north of the city. We'd spent weekends there during the early years of our marriage, back when she still pretended to enjoy my company. "Fine. 8 o'clock. I arrived early and parked where I could see the access road. The cabin sat on a small peninsula, surrounded by water on 3 sides. It was the kind of place where people went to disappear for a while, which made it perfect for the conversation we needed to have. Genevieve arrived at exactly 8, followed by a second car that I didn't recognize. Megan got out of the passenger seat, and Bradley emerged from behind the wheel. So much for a private conversation. I walked down to meet them at the dock, noting the way they clustered together like they were facing a common enemy. "This isn't what we agreed on," I said. "We thought it would be better if everyone was here," Genevieve replied, "so we can clear the air completely." "Clear the air about what?" Bradley stepped forward, trying to project authority. "About this ridiculous situation you've created. Cutting off Megan's tuition, threatening my business relationships, calling Genevieve's employer. It needs to stop." "Or what?" "Or we'll be forced to take legal action." I laughed, genuinely amused. "Legal action for what? Stopping voluntary payments to your daughter? Exercising my right to free speech? Good luck with that." Megan spoke up, her voice shaking with emotion. "Why are you doing this to us? We're your family." "No, you're not." The words came out harder than I'd intended. "You're Bradley's family. I've just been paying the bills." "That's not true, isn't it?" I looked at each of them in turn. "When did you start planning these family reunions? How many times have you gotten together without telling me?" Silence stretched across the group like a guilty verdict. "That's what I thought." I turned to walk back to my car. "Enjoy your family time. I'm done subsidizing it." "Richard, wait." Genevieve's voice carried a note of panic. "We can work this out. You don't understand what you're throwing away." I stopped and turned back. "What am I throwing away? A marriage based on lies? A stepdaughter who thinks I'm an ATM? A wife who's embarrassed by my existence?" "I'm not embarrassed. Then why lie about the weekend? Why not just tell me you wanted to spend time with your ex-husband?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. We all knew the answer. "Because you knew I'd object," I continued. "Because you knew it was wrong. Because you wanted to have your cake and eat it too." Bradley stepped between us, his face flushed with anger. "You need to back off, Richard. You're way out of line here." "Am I?" I moved closer, letting him see the anger I'd been keeping under control. "Bradley, you took my wife on a romantic weekend while I stayed home fixing leaky faucets. Who's out of line here?" "It wasn't romantic." "Then what was it? Business? Family therapy? Help me understand why it required champagne and yacht selfies." He took a swing at me then, a wild haymaker that I saw coming from a mile away. I ducked easily, letting his momentum carry him past me toward the water. The splash was deeply satisfying. Megan screamed and ran toward the dock while Genevieve stared at me like I'd committed murder. "You pushed him!" He swung at me. I ducked. Physics did the rest. Bradley surfaced, sputtering and humiliated, his expensive clothes ruined by lake water. Megan helped him climb back onto the dock while he glared at me with pure hatred. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is." I walked back to my car, leaving them clustered around their dripping patriarch. "Send me divorce papers if you want, Genevieve, but don't expect me to keep paying for the privilege of being treated like garbage." I drove home through the darkness, feeling lighter than I had in months. The confrontation had clarified everything. They saw me as an obstacle to their real family, a source of funding for their preferred lifestyle. Well, the funding had just dried up. Time to see how much family loyalty survived without my financial support. Saturday morning brought the nuclear option I'd been expecting. I woke to find Genevieve's side of the bed empty and her car gone from the driveway. A note on the kitchen counter explained everything in her precise handwriting. "Richard, I'm staying at Annika's while we figure out next steps. Your behavior last night was unacceptable. We need space to determine if this marriage can be salvaged." I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash, then made coffee and sat down to plan my next move. If Genevieve wanted to escalate this situation, I was ready to accommodate her. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Annika. We need to meet. There are things you don't know." Interesting. I texted back, such as, "Not over text. Meet me at Riverside Cafe at noon." I spent the morning researching divorce lawyers and transferring assets to accounts that only I controlled. 20 years of marriage meant community property laws would apply, but I wanted to understand my options before things got ugly. The Riverside Cafe occupied a converted warehouse downtown, the kind of trendy spot that served $15 salads to people who thought expensive food tasted better. Annika was already waiting when I arrived, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down across from her. "What don't I know, Annika?" She fidgeted with her coffee cup, avoiding eye contact. "This situation is more complicated than you realize." "Complicated how?" "Genevieve didn't just randomly reconnect with Bradley. I encouraged her to reach out to him." I leaned back, studying her face. "Why?" "Because your marriage has been making her miserable for years, and she deserved better." The honesty was startling and probably unintentional. "Better than what?" "Better than a husband who can't provide the lifestyle she wants. Better than pretending to be happy in suburbia with someone who doesn't understand her world." "So you decided to fix her life by reintroducing her ex-husband?" "I thought if she spent time with Bradley again, she'd remember what she was missing." "And if that destroyed my marriage? Collateral damage?" Annika's mask slipped completely, revealing something cold underneath. "Your marriage was already over, Richard. You just refused to see it. Because you were working to sabotage it." "I was helping my friend find happiness." I laughed, finally understanding the full scope of what I was dealing with. "How long have you been planning this, Annika? How long have you been poisoning my wife against me?" "I haven't been poisoning. You've been feeding her dissatisfaction for years, haven't you? Reminding her of what she gave up, what she could have with someone else." Her silence was confirmation enough. "Why?" I asked. "What did I ever do to you?" "You took away my best friend. Genevieve used to be fun, adventurous, willing to take risks. Marriage to you made her boring." The pieces clicked into place. Years of subtle undermining, constant reminders of my inadequacies, carefully planted seeds of discontent. "You orchestrated the whole yacht weekend, didn't you? It wasn't Genevieve's idea to reconnect with Bradley. She needed a push." You manipulated her into cheating on me. It wasn't cheating. They didn't sleep together. How do you know? Annika's face flushed. Because I was there. The final piece fell into place. You were on the yacht too. Someone needed to make sure things went smoothly. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Tell me about the yacht weekend, Annika. Tell me about your role in planning it. What are you doing? Documenting the truth. You just admitted to orchestrating my wife's affair. I want that on record. She reached for my phone, but I pulled it away. Richard, you need to delete that. Why? Afraid of what might happen if people find out what you've been doing? You don't understand what you're dealing with. Then explain it to me. Annika looked around the cafe, realizing too late that she'd revealed too much. Fine. Yes. I encouraged Genevieve to reconnect with Bradley. Yes, I helped plan the yacht weekend, but only because I knew it would make her happy. And destroying my marriage was just a bonus? Your marriage was a mistake from the beginning. Genevieve settled for you because she was scared of being alone after her divorce. I've been watching her waste 15 years of her life. I stopped the recording and put my phone away. Thank you for being honest, Annika. It's refreshing. What are you going to do with that recording? I haven't decided yet, but I'm sure I'll think of something. I left her sitting there, her perfect composure finally cracked beyond repair. That afternoon, I drove to Bradley's dealership for the second time in a week. But instead of going inside, I parked across the street and waited. At 5:30, he emerged from the building and walked to his personal car, a silver Porsche that probably cost more than my annual salary. I followed him to an upscale restaurant downtown, where he met Genevieve and Megan for dinner. Through the window, I watched them laugh and talk like the happy family they'd always wanted to be. Genevieve looked more relaxed than I'd seen her in years, animated in a way that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with her 20 years ago. The sight should have hurt, but instead it clarified everything. She was happier without me. They all were. I drove home and spent the evening planning my exit strategy. If they wanted their perfect family reunion, they could have it. But they'd do it without my financial support and without the safety net I'd provided for 2 decades. Sunday brought the final confrontation. I was working in the garage when all 3 of them arrived together, looking like a delegation sent to negotiate terms. Richard, we need to talk, Genevieve said. About what? About ending this situation like adults. I set down my tools and faced them. What did you have in mind? Bradley stepped forward, trying to project authority. We're prepared to make this easy for you. Uncontested divorce, fair division of assets, no alimony demands. In exchange for what? You stop interfering with our family relationships and you resume Megan's tuition payments until she graduates. I laughed. Let me make sure I understand this. You want me to pay for your daughter's education while you divorce me to marry her mother? It's not about marriage. Then what is it about, Bradley? Genevieve spoke up. It's about doing what's right for everyone involved. Including me? You'll be happier too, Richard. You can find someone who appreciates what you have to offer. The condescension was breathtaking. And what is it that I have to offer? You're a good man, stable, reliable, honest. Some woman will be lucky to have you. Just not you. We're not compatible. We never were. I nodded slowly, processing the magnitude of their selfishness. You're right. We're not compatible. You value money and status and social connections. I value honesty and loyalty and keeping my word. That's not fair. It's completely fair. I walked to my workbench and picked up the folder I'd prepared. Since you want to handle this like adults, here's my counterproposal. I handed Genevieve the divorce papers I had drawn up that morning. Irreconcilable differences. I keep my retirement accounts and personal assets. You keep whatever you brought to the marriage. No alimony, no ongoing financial obligations. She flipped through the pages, her face growing pale. This leaves me with almost nothing. It leaves you with exactly what you had before you married me, plus your freedom to pursue the lifestyle you really want. What about Megan's education? What about it? Bradley is her father. He can handle it. I told you, my money is tied up. Then untie it, sell the yacht, liquidate some investments, figure it out. Megan stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. You're really going to abandon me? After 15 years? I'm not abandoning you, Megan. I'm redirecting you to your biological family, where you apparently prefer to be anyway. That's not true. Then why have you been covering for your mother's lies? Why have you been participating in secret family reunions? Why haven't you once defended me or shown me any loyalty? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. That's what I thought. I turned back to Genevieve. You have 48 hours to review the papers. After that, I file with or without your signature. Richard, please. Please what? Please continue subsidizing your relationship with another man? Please pretend I don't know what's been going on? Please keep playing the fool while you rebuild your perfect family? I walked toward the house, then turned back one final time. You wanted me out of the picture, Genevieve. Congratulations. You got your wish. I left them standing in my driveway, their perfect plan crumbling around them. Through the window, I watched them argue among themselves, probably trying to figure out how to maintain their lifestyle without my financial support. My phone buzzed with a text from Danny at the gym. How did it go? I typed back, like pulling off a bandage. Painful, but necessary. Want to grab a beer and celebrate your freedom? I looked out at the 3 people who'd spent months planning my humiliation, now facing the consequences of their choices. Yeah, I typed. I think I've earned it. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Not the fool who paid bills while others made plans. Not the convenient husband who could be lied to without consequences. Just a man who'd finally learned to value himself enough to walk away from people who didn't. They'd wanted a villain to justify their betrayal. Instead, they got something worse, a man who refused to play the victim anymore. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, leaving them to figure out their new reality without me. The future was uncertain, but at least it would be honest. And after 20 years of lies, that felt like victory enough.